Hello, welcome to the David Watson podcast. Today I spoke with Robert, who is in the middle of a 3-part series of books. And yeah, we get into how it happens, what he's writing about. And I hope you enjoy it. Welcome to the David Watson podcast. We're going to start moving forward in an uplifting way. And so apart from the weather being good, how else is life good for you at the moment?
Oh, life is great. No complaints. Well, I have no right to complain. I'm retired, so I, pretty much doing what I want to do, which at the moment is right. And no complaints. Weather's great. Beautiful.
That's interesting. Is that you said you retired and you just get to write? Do you find writing difficult at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Writer's block is a real thing. There are times when it's really hard, and other days it just pours out. But overall, it's a very pleasant experience. I've wanted to write since I was a kid, and I'm very happy writing.
Do you remember writing as a child at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. I still carry around a box with me. It's yay big. That's got all kinds of written materials, and it includes the first little short story that I wrote called "Tips a Cat and Cuddles a Dog," and it was read by my 5th grade teacher to the entire class. But all of that work that's in that box, David, it's got red scribbles all over it because my dad was a professional editor by trade, and so it's just got stuff written all over it. But
hey, Dad, listen to this.
So, yeah,
I'm going to crush another dream right now, son.
No. Yeah.
So that first, what was it? Tips the cat, cuddles the dog, was it?
It was actually tips a dog and cuddles the cat.
Sorry.
I got it wrong the first right. No, I got it wrong the first time. It's tips a dog and cuddles the cat.
That honestly does sound like a cartoon strip. Like it's. But you say it when you say it like that. There's part of my brain that thinks I think I remember that cartoon strip.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Did you ever kind of explore it?
No, absolutely not.
So where were you as a child when you were writing these stories? Where was growing up?
I grew up in northwestern Massachusetts in a small podunk town called Northfield, farm community. Yeah, about 2,600 people.
All right. I'm trying to think to where.
Well, it's right where, if you know the United States, then it's right where New Hampshire, Vermont, and Mass come together. If you're looking at the states geographically.
Okay. So completely different, weather-wise and location-wise to California then.
Oh yeah. Most of my memories of the weather are very romanticized, because I was a kid, and it's all about snowmen and snow forts and leaf piles and all of that. But it's a tough life.
Yeah. I can imagine those guys get some harsh winters. So when you were a child growing up, sort of, where you were doing different things, writing. Did you kind of like? Because it's very easy when we're older to say I always wanted to write. But did you know then as a child, like, I'd love to do this as a living?
Yeah. And in that box is also some notes from our doctor who, at the time, I'm old enough now to go back to the days when doctors actually in small towns made house visits.
Yeah.
Our doctor lived across the street. And I have handwritten notes from him that say, hey, this is I think I was 13, 14 years old. And he wrote, this is a well child, and he wants to write novels. So I kept that little note because I have always wanted to write novels.
And how many have you written now?
Oh, just the two. I'm working on the third.
So what's are these? So where are we at the moment in terms of the book that's being written and the one that's coming out, just out?
So the Legends of Baelon it's an award-winning medieval fantasy series. And the first book, 6 Moons, 7 Gods, sort of sets the tone. The second book is going to be released actually a week from today on the 30th. And it carries on the story. So that's where we're at. The third book I'm just beginning to craft.
Do you have an idea? Like, so do you know when you wrote your first book, do you kind of know where it eventually ends?
So funny. No. When
That's
I
good.
wrote the first book, I did not have a clue. In fact, people ask me why fantasy, and I have to say I don't really have a decent answer for that. It's not like I sat down, David, going,
Mm.
I'm going to write a fantasy novel. That's just what flowed out.
Yeah.
Fantasy with tinges of grimdark and romance, right? And I
That's a
didn't
Tinder.
really
That's a
know.
Tinder profile right there. Grim, dark, and
Oh, yeah.
taste of touch of romance.
All right.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. But I didn't know where the story was going. It just took me. And but now with the second book that's coming out, the characters in the first book obviously fairly well developed. The plot line is fairly well developed, and there are these loose ends left hanging. So the plot for the second book, yes, I did have sort of in my mind a sense of where that was going. And now as I write the third one, I've got a pretty good sense of what's going on. Yeah.
I think you said something important as well that, which I think trips up a lot of people who write or try to write, is they think it instead of writing it, and just like you said, it just pours out of you. And I think people have an idea of what they think is going to be good, what they think is going to be trendy, or what they should write, instead of just writing what's inside them that wants to come out. It's almost like, oh, I love thrillers, so I'm going to write a thriller, when actually inside of you is some slapstick comedy that's trying to get out, trying to be funny, and you should just write that.
Yeah, it's tough. I've heard both things, right with your heart. And I tend to be in that camp because there's no sense. It's not going to be enjoyable for me if someone sits me down and says, no, tomorrow you're going to write a thriller, or tomorrow you're going to write a romance novel. I'm not ready. I don't want to do that. So writing what's in your heart's important to me. But you do also hear a lot of people counsel folks, if you want to be commercially, viable, then you don't get to write what you want. You need to write what the market is asking for, write what it's begging for. So, I see why people might do that, but I'm fortunately not in a position where I'm not dependent on this for my livelihood. So I get to write what I want to write. And if people enjoy it, that's great.
I think that's difficult, isn't it? Because if you're, like you say, if you can write for pleasure, that's great. But I would also sort of urge caution for people. If you're getting into writing to make money, you probably want to stick to your full-time job first.
It's incredibly difficult. It's it's a daunting thought.
Yeah.
I've told my wife many times, it's a good thing we're not financially dependent on this. If I was trying to be an author, to survive, we'd all be under a bridge somewhere, in a little tent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because it comes back to that thing that, whilst I believe everyone should at least in their lifetime write a book, just for the exercise of committing to doing something, don't think that it's going to solve all your financial woes and problems, because but if you do it and find the pleasure in it, it will be one of the most rewarding things you do. So,
absolutely.
Do you know how you got onto the idea of the book?
I don't. I've sat down and thought about that because I get asked that quite frequently, but even by friends and neighbors, what possessed you? Why that? And I have to say, I think, everything we probably write is somehow connected to something we've seen, something we've done, something that's touched us, a movie, a book. But I have a hard time with that. I know that, when I was a little kid, Zane Grey and Ian Fleming were big heroes to me. Those were the first guys that I started reading. And while they're not fantasy authors, they really like to thrill their audience.
Yeah.
So I think there's a part of that in me, is that I want it to be thrilling and adventuresome, and that comes from those guys. But then later in life, my dad read the Tolkien series to my sisters and I when we were children, and I loved Frank Herbert's Dune series.
Yeah.
And the movie Camelot had a big impact on me as a kid. So I think all of those things. There's probably a little piece of all of that. Scott Lynch's The Gentleman Bastard series. I really enjoyed that. I read that to my son. So I'm sure there's a bit of all of that sort of inspired the books I'm writing.
Because is it right that it's medieval war stories?
Yeah, it is. It's medieval fantasy, and we have knights and battles and all of that going on.
But when you say like it's medieval fantasy, is it fantasy in the fact that you've added in wizards, witches, and dragons, or is it just historically medieval, sort of correct, but it's a fictional story?
It's more the latter. There's not a lot of magic or wizardry. There are no dragons. In fact, I've had a number of folks tell me what I like about your books, Robert, is that you could take the action and the people and put it anywhere. Just the fact that it's set in a different world, in a different time, medieval time, is kind of interesting, and it makes it a little more fantastical. But no, the storyline can hold on its own.
That's because I don't think people realise, sort of in medieval times, just how much war was going on.
Yeah, brutal times.
Yeah,
brutal
incredibly
times.
brutal.
Yeah. No, it's not a good time really to be a woman. Not a good time to be a pacifist. Yeah, it's,
I don't think there was an opportunity to be a pacifist.
Yeah.
You know. So, did you do much kind of research, or did you focus on any particular areas?
Well, I did a bit of research, particularly when it got into things like sword play. I did some research into all of that, but I didn't do an awful lot of research into being correct as to exactly what was going on in the medieval times, because this is an alternate universe in terms of it being fantasy. So I get to create my world, and so I actually didn't want to get so mired down. But it is interesting. The first draft of that first book got thrown out completely, because honestly, it was an epic, but it was an epic failure. I had given it to an editor, and I knew the value of that profession, having my dad having been an editor. So I gave it to them, and they said, Robert, to your point, David, they said, is this fantasy or is this a historical fiction? Because honestly, I can't tell. You've got one foot in both camps, and you need to make a decision and put both feet in one or the other. And that was when I decided, no, it's definitely fantasy. So I don't need to worry so much about getting the history right, and let's focus on fantasy.
Because it's one of the things that I like when I'm talking to people and they come up with these ideas is when you take something from a particular era, say, and medieval, we'll just say, because for context, medieval times, but I don't do nothing with the history or the politics of that time. I just take the people of that time and make my own story from it.
Yeah, that's essentially what it's like. So I tell people the first book, think Camelot meets the Equalizer, right? So you've got this notion of an idyllic medieval period with castles and kings and all, but it's not technically what happened during medieval Europe. It's not that at all. It's in a different world. And
because I don't think I think if most people, if you ask most people, I don't think most people would know what happened in medieval Europe for a fact. I think most of it is myth and legends, and very little to do. I can't remember. I think it was King Richard. It was either King Richard or King John, who's one of the kind of like always, the English king, King Richard or King John. I can't remember which one it was. He was French, and he only actually visited England twice. But it's like, hey, that's medieval time. But it's like, but he was your king. Yeah, I don't think he ever sat on a throne anywhere in the UK. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? I don't think a lot of people realise that in medieval times, that it was Europe. Europe was just kind of everybody fighting over everything. There was no cohesion. There was no peace, and people just ruled each other. And sometimes people, you could be in an obscure village in the middle of nowhere and not even realize who your king is.
Yeah. No, we just took a river cruise in Europe, Germany, France, and we stopped by, visited a couple of castles and all. And the tour guides were very good, but I learned a lot just by listening to that. Right? It's very interesting, and a lot of things. Yeah, no, I didn't know, had no clue as to what was really happening during that time period. So. Yeah, I think you're
the more
absolutely
I've
correct.
ever looked at the history of the United Kingdom and kind of Europe, the more I realise how little I know. It's just too vast, and people, when you look at, I don't know exactly what period it was, but there was a kind of a period where we went from clans to noblemen, for want of a better term. And at that point, because the UK especially was, but so was, like everywhere in Europe was always being invaded by somebody. And because of that, there's just vast amounts of history where nobody has any idea who ruled who. And they were just fighting over borders that somebody put in place. Do you know what I mean? It was just like, all right, we're just going to fight, and I want your land, so we're going to fight you for it. And it's just like, oh, right, okay. And some people were just like, oh, you don't need to, you can just come on through. And other people like, no, this is my land and we're going to fight you for it. And then it became royal families, and it just it's crazy if you try to study it and look at it, and you just realize it's oh bugger, this isn't a sort of 50-piece jigsaw, this is a 50,000-piece jigsaw.
Yeah, fascinating, really.
Yeah, and what do you remember whereabouts you started and whereabouts you finished in Germany and France?
Let's see. Where did we start? We actually started in Switzerland.
Oh, nice.
And where did we end? Paris.
Oh, very nice. That's that must be a nice trip by river, because it's not something people would see a lot of.
Yeah, no, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Did it give you any ideas?
Not specifically, but it's inspirational.
Yeah.
Right? It made me feel, for whatever reason, I'm feeling like, oh, well, I'm home now. I felt like this is a part of my alter ego is, I'm staring at the castle and looking at the turret, and the tour guide is talking about, well, that's, the top of that turret's where they took the women who they thought might be witches and made them jump out the tower. And when they landed with a splat, if they died, well, I guess they weren't a witch. Huh, too bad for her. But if she lives, then clearly she is a witch, and we'll have to put her to death. So, I mean, it was no win. Brutal.
The reason I'm laughing, because I don't think people realise this. Like when they talk about, if you were a witch, this was happening. It's like, no. If you got accused of being a witch in medieval times, you were dead. One way or the other,
it's
you were
over.
Dead. Yeah. And anybody could accuse you of it. So you had to be careful. But like you said, we've got this impossible test that if you live, you're a witch, and then we're going to kill you.
Yeah.
It's just like, so what you're saying is I'm just going to die anyway. Right, okay. Well, move it along. And because out of those myths and stories, there was this idea of justice and noblemen, and, the right people fighting for the rights. And it's like, no, there was no rights. There was nothing pleasant. It was, like you say, a bad time to be a pacifist, because nothing good was coming from it.
Yeah, unimaginable, really.
So just coming back to your the books themselves, what is the conflict that happens in the book?
Well, you have this criminal organization, David, called the Takers Guild. It's really organized thieves. And what they decide is that they want to increase their control over this idyllic world of Baelon. But they've got two kings ruling the world that are not willing to be corrupted. They're too virtuous. So the criminal organization says, well, here's what we'll do. And they have this debate. we're going to kill the kings. We're going to murder them. And we're going to replace them with what we call self-governance. Because the theory being, if we've got these two virtuous kings, maybe if we can get rid of them and spread the authority to a larger number of people, that'll be a lot easier to control. So they do. They have this debate. Some people saying, no, it's a lot easier to corrupt two people than it is others. So let's just kill these guys. We'll kill them anyway, but replace them with our own puppets. And the other group saying, no, you don't get it. It's always going to be a problem. Let's spread the wealth. Get a whole bunch of people in there, self-governance by the people. How easy will it be to find one or two people out of those hundreds to line our pockets, who will accept our be willing to be corrupted? Much easier. You're going to spread it so thin that cracks in the leadership can't help but develop, right? So that's the conflict.
Because that's an interesting point when it comes to like strategy, when with criminal gangs and stuff like that. It's ultimately always about the money and how they get the money is the dilemma, because like you say, in one sense they want all of it, but in the other sense there's a part of them that knows that they can't have it. And interestingly, I've had authors on, I've spoken to authors about the mafia who have written stories about the mafia, and when you kind of listen, the big problem they always had was they were so focused on the money, there was never kind of a long-term investment on how they got the money. It was just like, that guy's making 20 grand a week, I want 22 grand a week off him. Yeah, but he's only making 20, I want 22. And it was all these the weird, and if they couldn't get something, they just killed somebody instead. It was just, well, we'll just eliminate them. It's just like, but now we've got this tenfold problem. And interestingly, was the one with the unions and the mafia always borrowing money off the unions that they never paid back and never had any intention of paying back. And it's just like, well, ultimately that came crashing down when it was just like, well, where's the money gone? And the mafia's like, it's not our problem.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because in the book, The Six Moons, Seven Gods, you have one of the capos, one of the, what they call an overseer for the guild, who believes someone has got the hand in his till, one of his workers in a little far off place. So he goes off and he's vengeful. He wants to get rid of this guy. But he also provides to the criminal organization, he's providing them more than they ask for every month, because he doesn't want them looking over his shoulder. He doesn't like them at all, really. And the magister, the supreme leader of this guild of takers, has got his own little web he's weaving, and he actually doesn't care about killing the king. He's got this other thing on his mind. It gets very complicated. But yeah, you can't trust anybody, right? No. Nothing's what it seems.
Yeah, and it always fascinates me, the human nature of that, because you could get 10 people in a room and divide everything equally 10 ways, and there'll always be one person that doesn't think it's fair, or doesn't care about it being fair, and will decide, I want more than you.
Yep.
And it's always that way. It's interesting. How do you explore that in the book? Or books, sorry.
No, that's all good. There's definitely a large amount of greed going on in the book, right? I mean, ultimately, that is what it's all about. The guild has these underground caches of what they've taken. This is the Guild of Takers, and everything they take gets siphoned and brought to this place called the High Order. And it's all underground, and they've stored it for years. They have vaults of this stuff. But who's it for, and who gets their piece of that, and the High Magister's plans for it? It all comes back to everybody wanting a bigger slice of the pie, and it just doesn't divvy up enough for not everybody gets what they want.
And that is, and it's amazing that it kind of reflection, isn't it? Because it says so much about all of us anyway. and the people around us, that no matter how you kind of, look, kind of weirdly, but I know we said we're not going to talk about politics, but there is this ongoing argument about billionaires should be taxed more. And the people with the most money are saying, if you keep taxing us, we're just going to leave. And the people with no money are like, if you keep taxing me, I got no money. And it's just like everybody thinks that they does, and I certainly don't know the answers. But it's one of those where everybody there's always some part where everybody feels they're not getting enough, and someone else feels, like I said, it doesn't matter. Billionaires don't think they have enough. The person that doesn't have enough doesn't think they have, knows they don't have enough. And there's some weird idea that nobody's ever worked out a good formula to how we kind of like divide it, like what is fair for everybody.
Yeah. I'm toying with each of the sections of my book start with a little quote, something to give the readers some sense of the background of characters and all. And one of the ones I'm toying with right now for the third book has something to do with all of that. It's something along the lines of, money's always the problem, isn't it? It's either too little or too much. Yep. Too much of it, and it makes you or too little of it, and it makes you do things you're not proud of. And too much of it, and it ruins you without you even knowing. Something along those lines.
It is. Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a nice idea, actually, to put quotes about characters or something like, because it kind of brings a little intrigue before I start.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, no, but it's nice. It's a thoughtful way of kind of lining up the dilemmas for the next person.
Yeah, some of them are used to give insights into the character's past, and some are used to sort of set the tone for the future. You can use them a whole bunch of different ways. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a very clever way of, like I say, just setting the tone every time.
Yeah.
No, it's just good. So, does any of it? Do you take any reflections from day-to-day politics and put it in the book? Or does it inspire anything?
Yes and no. It's not something that I do consciously. I don't set out and read the paper and decide, okay, today I'm going to put this into the book. But clearly, there are some things you can relate. Even what's going on in today's politics, you can relate to what's going on. And the book is full of political intrigue. And certainly I can tell you that a decades-long career in local government gave me plenty of fodder for, fantasy novels. There's a lot of suspense and intrigue going on at local government, believe it or not. But I don't try to translate those experiences directly into the book. But I will say there are one or two scenes in the book, a couple of conversations between characters that I can trace back directly to my work experiences and go, that's very reminiscent of that particular instance. Yeah.
So what is it you did then?
I started in the field of Parks and Rec, and I got my first couple of degrees in park administration. So I was director of Parks and Rec for a local government. But then I got drawn into the city manager's office, and the last 20 years of my career I spent in the city manager's office as assistant city manager and then interim city manager for a medium-sized city in California.
How much, would you say, in terms of the politics versus the policy, how much do you think was genuinely, even if it was wrong, even if they got it wrong, because I think one of the worst things about politics is it's always judged in hindsight, right? But I think one of the things that's difficult about politics as well is, what were the pressures where people were actually trying to change things for the greater good of the people, the greater good of the community, the greater good of the parks and recreation, and how much of it was just, I want this because I'm telling you to do it, or because I'm it suits me because I'm getting funding from somewhere else.
Yeah, I saw both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
In all my years, we had you have sort of the two factions, right, in local government. You have the operational side, which is largely professionals, the city manager and all of his or her staff. And they're professional by nature. They're engineers, they're police, they're fire, they're public works. And these people have an expertise in their particular area. And then on the other hand, you have the policymakers, the politicians. And these people are voted in. That could be your uncle, your aunt. I mean, they might be a dentist, they might be a psychiatrist, they might know nothing about these technical things, but they're setting policy. And so it works best, and this is just my humble opinion, but it works best when the policymakers are trying to work with the staff, as you say, for the greater good of the community. And I saw a good deal of that, where the politicians knew, I don't know much about public works, I don't know much about police and fire, so I'm here to set policies that will help make the community better. But I also saw periods of time where politicians came in and it was all about, what can I be given in this role? And how much can I tell these people how they should do their job, even though I don't know anything about it? Because somebody's got their hand in my pocket, or this union is willing to sort of line my pocket, so I'm going to do whatever they want, not necessarily for the good of the community, but for my good.
Well,
terrible.
The good of the providers of money, isn't it? Whoever's invested in me, and I think that's difficult wherever we are in the world. If there's some way to donate to a politician, nobody donates. I wouldn't give you $20 out of my pocket if you're a politician, unless I want something from you.
Yeah.
I've got no other reason to give it to you.
That's right.
Even if that's just so you get elected, you'll wave at me next time I'm in the coffee shop, so people think I know you. Do you know what I mean? You don't give money, especially in large sums, without some expectation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me now, my mother's in my head. She recently passed, but she was very political only because she was so concerned with doing what was right for the world, right? Yeah. And she was more about, and she gave more money than she probably should have, more than she could afford, to politicians, thinking they're going to do what's best and fight off the evil, the evil people that they're battling politically. So I don't know, but I do agree with you. In general, people, a lot of folks are giving money so that they can somehow bend the will of the politician. Yeah,
because it's how do you compete against somebody who's got financial backing if you don't get financial backing? It's because I always have this theory that, because people say it's power corrupts and corrupts absolutely, I don't think it is. I think it's the fear of losing power that corrupts people. I think when somebody rises to the top, I think it's the fear of losing that position that makes them vulnerable to corruption, because it's a weird, like, you've worked so hard to get to the top that it's the greatest moment in your life, but you're going to be toppled, and that's going to be the most humiliating day of your life.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's a theory based from a guy that's never done it. So, but no politician ever wants to not get elected again.
I also have met council members, this would be at local government, who don't want to touch it ever again, because they did go into it. They went into it with a good heart and thinking, here's the kinds of things that I'm going to be able to do. And they were so soured by the experience. Our fellow council members who were complete nutcases, psychologically crazy, that they just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So
I have a friend of mine, Jo. I think it was 18 years. She was a local councillor, being the mayor of Salisbury, and she retired and just said, "No, I just had enough of the abuse." It's just become a thankless task.
Yep.
And one of the things I don't know enough about local politics in America by any level. I know you have like local politics the same as we do, but in local politics in the UK, you still have to be affiliated to a party. So if you happen to be a Conservative local leader or a Labour local leader, you don't have any real connection to the government because you're at a local level. So you've probably you definitely wouldn't have met the Prime Minister. It's highly unlikely. Your only connection will be that your local member of Parliament. But people will abuse you as if you are the person in government responsible for the national policy. And you're like, no, I'm just the person that just who's trying to sort out our town.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart. I tell you that. I mean, as soon as you take that seat as a politician, you better be ready for the slings and arrows because they're coming no matter what your position is.
So you were saying about your dad was an editor and your mum always tried her best to give generously to politics. Where were they from?
My dad was from the States. My mom was from England. They met during the war, and my mom came overseas with my dad. So,
I wonder what drove her to. Because America has some of the most interesting history because it's so recent, if you know what I mean. And I've mentioned this before. America has what I call tangible history. Because you can still perhaps know somebody that knew the person that built the Golden Gate Bridge or made a decision on it. Whereas, like you were saying, when you were going through Switzerland, Germany and France, you see these big castles and they're incredible. They are absolutely amazing. But nobody knows anybody that had anything to do with them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. How could you? Yeah.
Whereas in America, there are still people alive whose grandparent, who they had hours conversations with, were part of something in the 1800s that was significant. Just up and down. So, and in terms of the way the politics evolved in America, it was based on bits of everything from everywhere. And although, people are, like I said, everyone likes to criticize politics in hindsight, at the time when the Constitution was being put together, it was doing something that nobody else had done, and it was taking all of these ideas from everywhere else, and it's still kind of really raw, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I always find it interesting that, like, so do you know what your dad's history was, like for his parents and stuff?
My dad came up from farmland. He lost his dad at a really early age. I don't know an awful lot about him other than he worked on a building ships.
Okay.
But he was from grassroots. I mean, and we were lower middle class family. My dad sort of picked us up by the bootstraps, and by the time we went to college, we were fairly solid middle class. My dad was a hard worker.
Yeah.
But that came from his roots. Had a hard life. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you imagine it? It's only what is it, about 200 years ago? What we did 2025 to 1825, maybe 200 years ago. People were still getting in wagons with no idea what was going to happen. And this is what I mean. It's absolutely crazy. People like 1825 in the United Kingdom, the Industrial Revolution had exploded. 1825 in America, you could still get in a wagon and go across the plains on, with no tracks, no roads. You just got to figure it out as you get there.
Yeah, no, I think that the passage of time is fascinating to me, and the older I get, the more fascinating it becomes, right? Because when you're a kid, somebody talked to you about 20 years ago, and you're like, wow, that's like forever ago. And now that I'm as old as I am, the 1800s seems to me like that must have been just yesterday.
Yeah.
Because I've already lived more than half a century. It's just, but you talk to kids about the year that I was born, and they're like, whoa, that's like, you're ancient.
But
Yeah.
it is, because it's interesting with America. Like I said, is there's parts of America you can go back to the 1700s, but as you go further and further west, in terms of how it expanded along with the Industrial Revolution, there's this point where it appears to be decades behind, but then rapidly overtakes the rest of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it just literally, and it was just people just walking sometimes. Just, I'm going to head in this direction and see what happens, and eventually I'm going to stop here because I like the view.
Yeah.
And it created an entire country. And so, how do you find the balance when you're writing?
You mean the balance between writing and living the rest of my life?
Yeah, that balance between, am I writing enough, or or do I have things to do?
Yeah, finding it's hard. Right now, like in this very moment, I feel like I'm not writing enough. But I rationalize that. I justify that by saying, look, the second book's about to come out. You're doing a lot with marketing. You're doing a lot with the podcasts, the interviews. This is your writing time, really. This is your creative time that you're devoting to the storytelling and the book. So don't worry about it. The writing will come. And I know it will. But I'm in a bit of a lull at the moment. But I think it's natural. That's happened the last time when I finished the first book. It took me a little while. And then all of a sudden, the creative juices get going. In fact, when I finished the first book, I wasn't sure I had a second in me. It's just that, it's that big of an effort, right? To finish it all off and be done with it and really feel like, okay, I've tied up all the loose ends. Everything's done. It's like running a marathon. When you're done, you're done.
Yeah.
And I remember first marathon I ever ran. I thought, I swear to God, I'll never do that again. I'll never do that again. Well, I did, but I felt the same way after the first book. It's like, oh man, that's it. But then, so now after the second book, I know I have begun it, but eventually there's going to become this energy that just sort of wells up in you, and now you're at it.
That always reminds me of a guy called Richard Bach, who wrote some books. And he said, he actually described himself as somebody that loathed writing, didn't like it at all. But he says there's something happens inside him, and it just gets to a point where he can't contain it anymore, and he has to just put it down on paper.
Yeah.
And that's I think that it is possibly a good description for a lot of people. And I always like to explore that because people can get wrapped up in how do you write a book or how do you write blogs, anything. And there is that balance between, like, especially if you're not being paid, how do you justify in your own mind giving time to doing something? Because anybody that writes will know one of the things you have to do, especially if you have, if you're in a relationship with somebody else, is like, don't disturb me. Just leave me the hell alone. And we don't care if somebody's popped round because they're coming in to say hello. It's just like, no, if I'm in the middle of writing something, the last thing I want is you disturbing me. And it doesn't matter if it's for 5 minutes. I don't have 5 minutes to give you. Not only do I not have 5 minutes to give you, I begrudge the fact you're even breathing now that you've interrupted my flow.
Oh, see, now my wife has taken the dogs out for the day because I couldn't. They go crazy. If a neighbor walks by the house, they just go crazy. I couldn't have them barking in the background. But I do wish she was sitting right here now, listening to what you just said, because it's not an elephant in the room. I mean, she knows darn well that it upsets me sometimes, and yet we don't specifically talk about that. I don't tell her. Yeah, it annoys the hell out of me. Oh, yeah. But because I love her. But yes, it does, because when I'm writing, I have to be in the story.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm there, and I'm immersed in that world. Mm-hmm. And every time something happens that takes me out of that world, it disrupts the flow, it disrupts the thinking, and it takes me time to get back into it.
I haven't written a blog, a book, or anything for a few years now, but I podcast instead. But I have these little routines, and these routines are what. And it was the same when I was writing. And when I get into that place, there, an energy, a flow, a fountain. I don't know how to describe those words so that it makes sense to everybody if I put it down in black and white. But all of us seem to be the same, that we get into a place, and when that connection, the two things join up, whatever it is, we can't be disturbed, because when you disturb us, you not only break that connection, we know something has gone that would have come through that flow that we'll never connect with again. And it could have been a paragraph, it could have been 3 chapters, but it's never coming back. And I know I've lost that, and you now want me to be civil with you.
Oh God, yeah, no, that resonates, and I think it's one of the reasons why, David, I tend to find that my best writing comes late at night, when it's dark and it's quiet, no one else is around. I'll tell my wife during the daytime if I'm trying to write. I tell her I'm going under. Yeah, these come on, and I'm listening to music, because for whatever reason I write better when I listen to music. But yeah, it's important not to have the disturbances.
That's interesting as well, because I went through a stage in my life where I had to have music on or something. Now I can't even work unless I'm in absolute silence. Doesn't matter what I'm doing, it has to be silent. But I used to always have to have music on in the background, and now I have to have absolute silence. I can't do anything unless it's silent. I don't know what changed or why, but and this is the thing I like, is with these conversations you find out that we all do things so differently, but in some ways that the framework is exactly the same. It's just how we put the blocks together.
Yeah, for me, it's the music, and it can't just be any music. I have a playlist, and it's largely sad ballads. Don't ask me why, but that works for me. It's a comfort zone, and it's just like, there it is. That's my insulation, and now I'm back in sync. Yeah,
that's so you just said something there that I absolutely love. Is I used to do this thing, and whenever I'd say something to people, I'd say, don't ask me why, because some of the best things I do in life are because I don't question why it works. And I don't do it anymore, but I used to go to, this is like, pre-COVID lockdowns and all of that, but I used to go to the gym, and then where my gym was, there was a 10-15 minute walk into Salisbury near where I live, and I'd go and sit in a coffee shop, and all I would do is have a cup of coffee. But that walk to the coffee shop and sitting there having a cup of coffee, sometimes I'd stare at my phone, sometimes I'd read a book, sometimes I'd just stare out the window, made me feel that everything in my life was amazing. And people, why is that? I don't want to question the harmony that it brings to my life. I'm just happy to sit in acceptance of that harmony.
Yeah, I love it.
Because there's that part of me, if I figure it out, it's gone.
Yeah.
So when you say like sad ballads, is there any like particular decade, any particular artist, or is it just whatever comes up?
No, when I'm not writing, occasionally I'll go on Spotify or iTunes, and I'll just listen to music, and occasionally I hit an artist, but it's not as though I like everything they do. I love that song. Yeah.
I'm probably as a music person, I like songs, not artists, if that makes sense. It's very rare.
It makes all the sense in the world to me. I have a number of songs. I love them. I listen to them every time I write. And yet if I listen to everything by that artist, not so much.
Yeah, I can listen to the same song on repeat if it gets inside my head for hours, if not days on end. And then you play me something else by the same artist, and I couldn't be more repulsed. It's just like, no, it doesn't do anything. And it's similar. It's like I say, I like how that goes. I like if you were going to put a timeline, when would you like the next book to be finished?
Oh, sometime in 2026. I definitely don't want it to go past that. So I'm hoping it will be released in 2026. Yeah.
And I've just got a couple of more questions before we finish up. Where can people find you?
They can find me at my website, which would be rawalkerwriting.com. They can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
Also just Robert Walker. I think if you go on Facebook and look up Robert Walker or R.A. Walker Writing, you'll find me. You'll find me on LinkedIn, and you'll find the books on Amazon and Goodreads, your typical places.
Yeah. And lastly, just this is my random question. I want you to imagine, and it's just purely an imagination exercise, and I want you to imagine that you have a time machine, and the time machine is a car, and it's any car of your choice. What car would be your time machine? Where would you go to and why? And what music would be on the radio?
Oh, gosh. I'm not a big car guy. I'm not a big car aficionado. So, but I don't know. Having been a big Ian Fleming guy, maybe I'll take James Bond's little sports car.
So we're going to Aston Martin.
I'll take
Aston Martin
I'll
DB5.
take the Aston Martin. There you go. I love it. Where will I go in the time machine? Ooh, and I can go forwards or backwards.
Do what you want. Yeah.
All right, I'm going forwards. I'm going forwards 100 years, David. But I don't want to stay there long. I just want to see.
Yeah.
Because I think it's just going to be. It's going to be like a fantasy world, right? I feel like if I go past in years past, and I know something about it already. I want to see what's coming.
Yeah.
But I know I don't want to stay there long because it's probably just going to freak me out. But I'd love to see it. Was there another part to it?
What music would you play on your radio?
The car. The music. I'm going to have my playlist. I'm going to have Kaleidoscope by what's the young lady's name? Gosh, do her justice now.
Let me look that up.
Kaleidoscope. Yeah. She's kind of controversial right now, but she's got a lovely voice. And that song in particular is hauntingly beautiful. And I would have a bit of I like Callum. Is it Callum Scott?
Is it Chappelle Roan?
Yeah, Chappelle Roan. Yep. Kaleidoscope. I'll have her playing in the background for sure. And I think a few by Callum Scott.
That sounds perfect.
But again, I'd have sad ballads going in the background. It'd make me want to write about the experience.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting one in the future. But I think one of the things that is, I sometimes ask this question, and we were talking about your parents, and well, if you could imagine your parents, and this is how I see the future, is if you could imagine talking to your grandparents about something today, like AI or smartphones, transgenders, you pick the weird thing. How would you make it make sense to them?
Gosh.
And that's how I see the future.
I don't know that you could, right?
Yeah.
It would be that bizarre. And that's why I'm sure I can't even imagine. Because things are happening now exponentially faster, right? When you look at how long it took to get to the TV or whatever, and then all of a sudden things are just blasting out. I imagine the next 100 years are going to turn out stuff I can't even imagine. So
yeah, and that's how I kind of look at that. You can imagine only 2, maybe 3 generations ago. Okay, I'm going to explain what AI does on a smartphone. I'm going to explain how you and I are talking today. and make it make sense to them.
Yeah. Good luck.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I mean, and here's the funny thing, because when you look at it from that perspective, explain how a hot shower works for them. Just
or electricity. That's it.
And that's what I'm saying. Because when you say like explain a hot shower to them, you've got to explain electricity. You've got to explain internal plumbing. You've got to explain electricity coming from power stations through power grids into the street, into their house. Because your grandparents, great grandparents, never heard of it, never saw of it.
Yeah, well, hey, David, you couldn't even explain to me about electricity. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
It's just I still don't. It's a concept. It's like what?
But that's what I mean. Because how would you explain it? Because I can tell you, I pay the bill, and when I turn that switch on, it works. Doesn't mean I know anything about it. Oh, and I know I shouldn't stick metal things into the plug socket while I'm holding them. That's my knowledge of electricity.
Yeah,
it does good things, but it can do bad things. So. So, anyway, that's thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you, David. My pleasure. I enjoyed it as well. Yeah.
Thank you. And there you go. That was Robert. Please do check Robert out. Check the links in the description. And pause for a thought. How many things going on today would you be able to explain to somebody from 200 years ago? How would you make it make sense? But as always, thank you very much for listening, for the comments, the support. It's always appreciated. And wherever you're from, whatever you believe, please do take care and be blessed. Thank you.